Welcome to SCDM's AI and eSource podcast series. My name is Mike Buckley, and I'm the co-chair for the SCDM eSource Implementation Consortium, and I'll be facilitating today's podcast. The consortium's mission is to advance the adoption of eSource in clinical research. And today we're going to be talking about the use of artificial intelligence in its many forms, whether it's generative AI, agentic AI, machine learning, natural language processing, large language models, or GPT. These all have the potential to increase eSource adoption through the most effective implementation processes, documentation, training, and validation. This podcast series is going to talk with folks using AI and eSource from multiple clinical research perspectives, sites, sponsors, and technology vendors. Today, we have 5 guests who will be giving the site perspective on AI. They're from a variety of areas in Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center and New York City's research informatics and the organization's larger informatics teams. I'd like to welcome you all, and I think this podcast is unique since we have a variety of stakeholders who really are the engine and the users behind an application at Memorial Sloan Kettering called Clinical Trials Data Hub. So, quick SCDM disclaimer before we get started. The podcast is provided by the Society for Clinical Data Management eSource Implementation Consortium. It's intended for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal, regulatory, or professional advice. SCDM and the speakers are not responsible for any actions taken based on the information provided. Users are advised to consult with appropriate professionals for specific advice tailored to their individual circumstances. The opinions expressed are attributed to the speakers only and not their respective employers. Okay, let's get started. Before we jump in, I wanted to help level set about clinical research at MSK. The clinical research program at Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York City is one of the largest in the country. We have approximately 1,800 open research studies with approximately 25,000 patients on study each year. There are approximately 225 data management staff who work solely on abstracting data from our electronic health record and other systems into sponsor electronic data capture systems. And more importantly, we have over 40 plus FDA approvals that MSK has worked strategically in getting those approved since 2019. And as you can see, with a very large clinical research portfolio like MSK's, this is an issue at MSK and also globally. There's a lack of available data abstraction tools for data managers in clinical research. So at MSK, Clinical Research Informatics and Technology responded to this unmet need out in the landscape and created an in-house data abstraction and aggregation tool called MSK Clinical Trials Data Hub. So before we talk about Clinical Trials Data Hub, I wanted to zoom out a bit and see what MSK is doing in the AI space for clinical research as a whole. And with that, I'd like to invite Ashley Yang. She's a product manager in clinical research, informatics, and technology, and I'd like to welcome Ashley.
Thanks for having me, Mike. At MSK, how MSK is using artificial intelligence is to augment clinical research workflows with a strong focus on responsible adoption in a heavily regulated environment. All our clinical research staff have access to a secure enterprise AI portal where they can use multiple large language models in a controlled setting designed for sensitive data. This gives staff a safe space to experiment and understand where AI adds value in their day-to-day work. In practice, what this means is that most teams that I've worked with are using AI for things like documentation, summarization, drafting communications, all areas where using AI reduces administrative burden. We also have a small pilot group of about 30 staff across all roles in clinical research, testing a healthcare-focused model. That diversity helps us evaluate use cases across the full research lifecycle beyond just administrative tasks. And most importantly, the emphasis here at MSK is very much human in the loop. We're using AI to support and enhance staff capabilities, but the clinical research teams retain the decision-making and accountability.
Great, thanks, Ashley. How do you see AI amplifying data managers' work near term and in the long term?
In the near term, the biggest impact for data managers is building that confidence in using AI within clinical research, understanding where it adds value and how to use it appropriately in a regulated environment. On the longer term, as AI becomes more integrated into day-to-day work, the role shifts toward oversight and stewardship. Data managers will spend more time validating outputs, maintaining data quality, and guiding where AI should and shouldn't be used.
Thanks, Ashley. What success metrics or key performance indicators are the teams tracking for this initiative?
When we think about success metrics and KPI, we're focused on three areas: efficiency, adoption, and data quality. For efficiency, we're looking at reductions in manual effort and faster turnaround times for routine tasks. For adoption, it's about how consistently staff are actually using these tools in their workflows and whether they find them useful. And for data quality, we're looking for accuracy and precision of the outputs, making sure anything supported by AI still meets the standards required in a regulated clinical research environment. Ultimately, we want to make sure we're not just moving faster, but doing it in a way that's safe and responsible in clinical research.
Great. Thanks, Ashley. Next, I'd like to invite Nancy Bouvier, who is the Clinical Trial Data Hub Product Manager in Clinical Research Informatics and Technology. Welcome, Nancy.
Hi, thanks, Mike.
Can you tell us a little bit about Clinical Trials Data Hub?
Absolutely. So Clinical Trials Data Hub, or what we call it as CT Data Hub, is an MSK application that supports day-to-day clinical trial operations by bringing together trial-relevant patient data like adverse events, medications, vitals, and labs into one place so the research staff can review and validate information without having to jump through different systems to find the data. And the reason we built it was pretty straightforward. Before CT Data Hubs, the data managers were spending a lot of time manually searching the EHR to find information that ultimately has to be entered into sponsor EDCs. And in our early discovery work in 2022, through interviews and a lot of workflow analysis, we identified data entry bottlenecks and high volume data points, especially around AEs and concomitant medications. We were hearing that the data entry work could take on the order of more than 20 hours per week, with a lot of the time lost specifically to EHR searching for data to enter. And we moved from that discovery phase into a functional prototype. And as part of that, we did A/B testing in the prototype to validate that the approach was quicker and easier in practice, not just in theory. And we then launched into production with CT Data Hub in 2023. And after launch, the focus really has shifted to scaling. In 2024, we added trial-specific tools that help staff manage work more directly, like a tracker that supports monitoring patient-level tasks, tracking pending items, and viewing study progress. And from a development perspective, CT Data Hub has been built closely with research operation teams as a workflow tool, not a standalone data repository. So the emphasis has always been on making data easier to find and review in a consistent way, so teams can spend less time hunting for information and more time on the actual work of running studies.
Great. Thanks, Nancy. How are you using AI extraction in production in the Clinical Trial Data Hub application? Do you mind talking a little bit about that?
Yeah, not at all. So in production today, we're using AI extraction in CT Data Hub to surface protocol required information from unstructured clinical notes. So data managers don't have to manually search through large volumes of documentation. And our first use case for this approach is performance status. So the model is scanning signed Epic progress notes. It identifies performance status assessments and displays both the extracted value and the original source context directly into CT Data Hub. And that source context is intentional. It lets data managers review what the model found and decide whether it's correct, rather than treating the output as final. And this is very deliberately a human in the loop workflow. The AI is there to support review and efficiency, not to replace clinical judgment or data management oversight. Everything is source linked, it's reviewable, and it's captured in an audit trail, so people stay fully in control of what ultimately gets used. And what's been important for us is that this was built directly into an existing workflow rather than as a separate tool. Data managers are already reviewing data in CT Data Hub, so AI extraction simply reduces the time spent locating information without changing accountability or decision making. And that focus is fitting in real regulated workflows is what has allowed us to move this into production use and to build confidence over time with it.
Great, thanks, Nancy. How are you tracking success metrics and use in the application?
Yeah, so we track success using a mix of adoption, efficiency, and quality signals. And performance status is a good example of how we think about it overall. First, we look at whether teams are actually using the performance status feature in their real workflows. Sustained use matters much more to us than one-off usage because it tells us the feature fits into how people already work. Second, we look at efficiency, specifically whether the feature is reducing the amount of time data managers spend manually searching through clinical notes to find performance status information. We also pay attention to how often users have to intervene because of ambiguity, since that helps us understand where the model is helping and where it still needs improvement. Finally, trust and auditability are critical. With performance status, extracted values are always source linked back to the original notes, reviewed by a human and captured in an audit trail. So if something saves time but people don't trust it or can't explain it during review, that's not success for us. Success is reduced manual effort while maintaining data quality, transparency, and regulatory confidence.
Great. Thanks, Nancy. We're going to switch gears a little bit and talk to the Digital Informatics and Technology Solutions team, Bo Kim, who's in Digits and is a product designer. And we'll also talk to Rohan Singh, who's a data scientist. I'd like to invite Bo to join us. And Bo, I have a quick question for you. Can you tell us about the importance of design thinking? I think Nancy mentioned that a bit when she was talking about CT Data Hub and the development of the Clinical Trials Data Hub application.
Of course. Thanks, Mike. Design is important for any kind of technological solutions, but especially for introducing new AI solutions within a high-stake, risk-averse setting. Like the clinical research operations, it really requires us to understand what is the right level of automation that users really want. So from a user experience design perspective, we put extra effort into incorporating the end users, as Nancy said, into the process. And the goal was to make sure that we get the voices of the users to calibrate the sweet spot between the level of oversight that our users are looking for and what the model can actually deliver. Furthermore, whenever we introduce new automations, the accountability aspect doesn't go away. So the responsibility of data accuracy still falls on the end user. So the AI solution was introduced as a human-in-the-loop experience to preserve the clinical research coordinators as the final decision maker. So there are a lot of design iterations done focusing on these aspects.
Great, thanks, Bo. I think Nancy mentioned it a little bit, and I heard you as well. When you were thinking about using AI in Clinical Trials Data Hub, were there any regulatory considerations that you were thinking about when using it? And I know that we specifically, I think, went for AI extraction first. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. As I said, the accountability aspect doesn't go away, and it's a very highly regulated setting. So as Nancy also briefly mentioned in the beginning, we put a lot of features into place to make sure that there's transparency into who made what decisions, and then introducing an audit trail that's visible for everyone. Any decision making that was done was all documented, so this is easily tracked within our system. And we also put a lot of effort into the onboarding experience to make sure that people are aware about what the functionalities are meant to deliver and the intention of it, what its limitations are, so that people can understand its use without overly relying on it as well.
Great, thanks, Bo. I'd like to invite Rohan Singh, who's a data scientist in digital informatics and technology solutions. Welcome, Rohan.
Thank you, Mike.
Can you tell us a little bit about the AI extraction processing in CT Data Hub, a look under the hood, so to speak, for our listeners?
And definitely, that's the interesting part of the process. So I'll start with the problem. So the problem is, that we have multiple patients on year-long trials, and they generate hundreds of clinical notes across production. That is around 83 million tokens per month on an average. Somewhere in there is one sentence called ECOG performance status 1. Finding that sentence reliably every night with zero tolerance for error, that's the engineering challenge that we're trying to solve here. So uh, we solved this problem in three different layers. At first, since we have a lot of nodes that are being generated, we try to filter them out. So before any AI touches anything, a rule-based segmentation isolates candidate spans, pattern matching, section detection, and keyword proximity. Of 83 million tokens, only 4.8 million make it through. So we cut 94% of the LLM, of the tokens that the LLM ever sees. That buys us a lot of cost control, reproducibility, and traceability. Every prediction will map back to a specific span in the specific node. And that's how we are showing the source that was being mentioned earlier. In our next layer, so once we have from a massive chunk of nodes, we filter the exact sections that we need for determining, for example, performance status. We take those sections and we send it to an LLM. So all the filtered spans will hit an on-premise GPT-OSS 120B model with a constrained JSON prompt. The model returns the PS scale, the numeric value, and the exact source excerpt. There is no free form generation. We only generate structured outputs. We did a lot of benchmarks with multiple models like Claude 3.7 Sonnet, Llama 3.370B, and GPT-OSS 20B models. And the 120B gave us the best balance of accuracy, speed, and institutional deployment constraints. The third layer is the consumption layer. So the extracted values surface through the institutional file server as an observation resource. The score, the source text, the node metadata, and the model provenance. CT Data Hub, the application, consumes standard healthcare data. It does not know or care about how the extraction happened on the backend. Now, what makes it work, right? So we have 100% concordance on confident predictions in production. So out of 442 records that were confirmed, we got all the confident ones correctly. There were 5 uncertain cases because they were genuinely ambiguous nodes. The model rightly flagged them that okay, we see some ambiguity here because on the same day a patient had multiple P stats on different nodes. So we surfaced that to the end user, and that's how the model kind of was designed to work. So the design constraint that shaped everything was the source excerpt travels with the answer, right? DMs never see a naked value. They see ECOG1 alongside the exact sentence from the node, highlighted with the date and the author. That's what turns could use into actually uses, right? Because the end user can see the source. Frequent users save about 5.5 minutes per abstraction because they're not hunting through the EHR anymore. And this is like from our initial data that we saw on the UI. Now, the interesting thing is where this is going, right? So PS extraction is a solved problem in our architecture. Single source, deterministic, high confidence. We just filter, we extract, and we deliver. So this was the easiest case that we initially chose. But the next problem that we're trying to tackle are, A and ConMed linkage, TNM staging. They require reasoning across multiple sources. A staging assessment might need path repos, imaging, and clinical notes reconciled. An eligibility check cross-reference a patient's full profile against a dozen of protocol criteria if you want to do like trial eligibility checks, right? So what we have built is what we call an agentic backend. So instead of a fixed pipeline, an autonomous agent with tools. It can search protocol text, it can pull patient profiles, navigate document sections, examine page images, and iterate until it has enough information to answer. The PS pipeline is a form to fill out. If you think about it, it's just a form that we're trying to fill out with the scores. The agent is like a research assistant who knows how to navigate the patient chart and the protocols, etc. The same design principle carry forward. So every claim gets linked to source evidence, the full reasoning trace is visible, and we calibrate the oversight to task complexity. For example, just if we have a simpler task like PS, minimal source complete extraction, and we only escalate when if the problem is very complicated, like TNF staging, then we allow the agent to do more complex things with more complex tools. But for things like PS, as I mentioned, it would be like a simple workflow that currently exists. So we're trying to combine all these workflows into one agentic backend. So that's the future.
Great. Thank you, Rohan. That was fantastic. Next, I'd like to invite Michelle Jensen. She's the clinical research coordinator in the Leukemia Program for Drug Development. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you for having me speak to my experience and utilization of CT Data Hub on this podcast with you all. Having been a product tester prior to CT Data Hub's official implementation has allowed me to assist in both development and the utilization of the tool. Additionally, I've been able to assist the team in creating specifics within it that would provide the most benefit to the user. Prior to the implementation of CT Data Hub, users were sifting through multiple systems in order to navigate to required data points, which would then, as discussed before, provide a increased timeline in providing this information to the sponsors. Utilization of this AI integrated tool has increased user productivity and accuracy. Some of the main points that CT Data Hub has improved for its users is the ability to see majority of the information related to a patient's visit in one uniform platform. The integration of the performance status function, which as discussed prior, extracts a specific data point from the provider's notes, has eased the time burden on the users in locating this information within the patient's chart. Since the system is user verified, if the AI feature sees a conflicting information or data point in the provider note, it will bring that specific section of the note in for the user to check and provide a verification stop on the data point. If there are multiple instances of this data point on a single day, this is where the verification feature is crucial to assure that the data extraction is extraction from the correct source that's going to be needed by the user. When working with outside sponsors, the need for accurate and precise data entry is critical. The specific double check provides trust in the software as well as trust within the users to confirm the extracted data points. Overall, the implementation of this tool has assisted users in more efficient data entry and verification.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. A question for everyone. Can our listeners look forward to any upcoming conferences or a potential forthcoming publication about AI extraction use in Clinical Trial Data Hub?
Yeah, we are actually preparing a manuscript right now that focuses on our production use of AI for performance status extraction, including how it fits into the regulated clinical research workflows and what we will learn from the real world use case. So stay tuned for more on that.
Great. Thank you, Nancy. And thanks to everyone for your time today. Ashley, Nancy, Bo, Rohan, Michelle, and sharing your AI and eSource journey. Everyone, please join us on Spotify for additional podcast episodes on AI and eSource. And thanks for listening.